on my tours that sort of say, oh, is that Buckingham Palace? Are you sure? And sometimes, yeah, exactly. Sometimes people are a little bit surprised if you've seen other royal palaces in Europe, or maybe if you've gone somewhere like Hampton Court or Windsor here in London. Comparatively, Buckingham Palace doesn't really have a lot happening. I mean, it's not set in acres and acres of land, right? You're looking at the front door, it's the archway in the middle. There's literally cars driving right in front of it. There's no statues out front, no fountains or carvings. A little bit of gold on the gate, but that's kind of it. And the reason Buckingham Palace has this fairly simple design is because originally it was not supposed to be a royal palace. Buckingham Palace is definitely the most famous. These days, this is the place where the Queen spends the least amount of time. She hardly ever comes to Buckingham Palace. In fact, for the entirety of this year, she's only been here for a total of 52 days. That's it. Last year we got 75. I don't think we're gonna get that many this year.
So this is pretty much the view that you're going to get when visiting the Buckingham Palace. If you wanted to see the guards, you can't get any closer because there's a gate that blocks the guards off from the people who's viewing it.
Is real bear skin. Now the way they've kind of worked it is that they get most of the bear skin from Canada. So in Canada, every year, some of the native Inuit tribes can apply to the government for permission to go bear hunting. And part of the arrangement with the government means that they give some of the bear skins over to the military. So if we need to make hats, you know, we call Canada, hello, they send the skins over here and then they're turned into the hat. So this way the military tells people they don't hunt the bears to make the hats. And they don't talk, they don't walk, they don't move around. When in reality, it's not quite like that. For a start, their shifts don't last 12 hours, 10 hours, 8 hours, 2 hours. And throughout that 2 hours, they will move around. While we're here, they might move. They change the hand that holds their gun a lot. They stomp their feet. It's boring when I do it, but it's cool when they do it, obviously. And then they'll go on the march. They'll do 15 paces back and forth. So it's a 2-hour shift in which they're moving around every 5 to 10 minutes. The flag of the United Kingdom, you all recognize it. Whenever that flag is flying on top of Buckingham Palace, it means that the Queen is not home. No, is not here today. Because that's the flag of the United Kingdom. It's not the flag of the Queen. Right? You're the Queen. You don't share a flag with everybody else. No, she's got her own personal flag. It's called the Royal Standard, and I've got a picture of it here so you can see. Desire to save as many old buildings as possible, Victorians developed an incredibly nasty habit of building everything new to look a lot older than it actually was. It's classic Victorian. Our first comprehensive English dictionary, and this is where he was living when it happened. Now, when Johnson was here, he wasn't by himself. He was a man of means, plus he'd married a very wealthy lady, so these were rich people. So they were living with a whole bunch of maids and butlers and servants, but somewhat unusually, he was also living with a whole bunch of cats. Now, some people had cats as pets in the 1700s, but overall, dogs were a lot more popular. So the fact that Johnson at any time had 8, 10, 12 cats, that was considered kind of weird, and this is Hodge. Now, a lot of people who went to Johnson's house commented on the fact that because Hodge was his favorite, he was very spoiled. In a lot of ways, Hodge had become the master of the house. So things tended to revolve around him. He went to functions, he attended dinner parties, and Johnson also said that Hodge helped him write the dictionary, which I'm sure is true. And we have arrived to St. Paul's Cathedral, considered by many people to be Christopher Wren's masterpiece. It was declared officially open by Parliament on Christmas Day in the year 1711, and that was in the reign of Queen Anne, so she's the one here with her statue out front. Now, since its construction, St. Paul's has hosted some pretty big events. In 2012, Elizabeth II celebrated what we call her Diamond Jubilee, and that means it was the 60th anniversary of her becoming queen. As really rich men and women will put on their nicest, most expensive clothes, they'd come outside Buckingham Palace, they'd casually stroll up and down the road here, taking what became known as a Constitution Walk, and eventually that gave the path its name. Now, Queen Victoria, one of our more famous monarchs, she took Constitution walks here also, but Victoria took all of her walks in the back of her carriage, which is a little bit like jogging inside of your car. So she'd get into her carriage and walk up and down the road every day. And Londoners would come down and line the streets in their hundreds to see her come past because Queen Victoria was massively popular. When she first came to the throne in 1837, she was young. She'd only just turned 18. She was devoutly religious, and she had been raised in a very, very strict household. Now, the two kings that had come before Victoria, her two uncles, George IV and William IV, they were the opposite of that. They both came to the throne in their 60s. They spent loads of money, they ate a lot, they drank a lot, they had a lot of girlfriends, they had a lot of children. In fact, between them, they had over 30 children, but neither of them had any children with their wives. So when Victoria came to the throne, everybody was just really excited for this beautiful young Christian girl to be wearing the crown instead of the two debauched older men from the 15 years before. And throughout Victoria's reign, like most of our monarchs, her popularity would wave up and down. But by the time she died at the turn of the 20th century, not only had she become one of the most popular monarchs we'd ever had, she had also broken the record to become the longest serving sovereign the country had ever seen. And that is why you'll notice while you're here in London, everything is named after Queen Victoria. Australia has a state of Victoria. Canada still has her birthday as a national holiday, and that's why she was our longest serving ruler. And she held that record for a very long time, you guys. She held it until 5:30 p.m. on the 9th of September 2015, when our current Queen Elizabeth II finally broke Victoria's record, and now she is our longest serving sovereign. And just in case you haven't been counting, Her Majesty has now been on the throne for over 67 years. So if you're coming back to London in a few years' time, be prepared for a lot of stuff here to get renamed after Elizabeth II. In fact, we've already started renaming some of our monarchs after the Queen here in London. To St. James's Palace, designed by Henry VIII, and again, very much Henry VIII style. He liked the red brick, the low, long buildings, and the gatehouse kind of in the center. And this is exactly how it would have looked in Henry's time. So he's young, he's hot, he's rich. He's a real Renaissance guy as well. He's into everything. He brings tennis into the country for the first time. He's a keen sports player. He's fluent in 5 foreign languages. He can play 7 musical instruments. He composes his own music as well. He's the first of our monarchs to put any funding into the study of surgery and medicine, astronomy and navigation. He founded the Royal Observatory. He founded the Royal College of Surgeons. He founded the English Navy. He was the first of our monarchs to give his daughters an education. He thought that girls could go to school as well as boys, which 500 years ago was a crazy thing to think. And also, he was the first of our monarchs to speak English exclusively at court. Because up until the reign of Henry VIII, the official language at court in England was French. And wealthy people loved the fact that up here they all spoke French, while the poor people down here spoke English. And Henry was the one that kind of took English off the streets and officially brought it into the upper levels of society. But in the 1500s, it was believed by everybody, including doctors, that it was always the mother of the baby that determined if it was going to be a boy or a girl. So for Henry, the reason he has a daughter and he doesn't have a son, well, that's nothing to do with him. It's entirely the fault of his wife, which as far as Henry is concerned means time to get a different wife. So, being the Catholic king of a Catholic country, he writes to the Pope in Rome and he asks for divorce, and the Pope writes back and tells him no. And Henry does not like being told no, and he kind of says, the Pope, forget the Pope. In fact, Catholicism as a whole, we're done, I'm going to be a Protestant. And Henry makes his own new Protestant church, which he calls the Church of England. And then when it comes time to appoint the head of the new Church of England, Henry appoints himself. Which is a move that I admire in a way. Favorite facts about London is that London contains 0.1% of the population of the entire world, but 20% of the entire world's cameras are inside our city. So the next time you pick your nose, you think nobody's watching, they are. Right, guys, so we've arrived to Westminster Abbey, one of the best known churches in the world. The tower itself and the clock inside were built 160 years ago, that they're both getting a total refurbishment. So it's long overdue, and that's why it's going to take so long, because it's the entire thing being redone. Oh, and just a small note, I think a lot of people know this because it's really good bar trivia, but technically speaking, Big Ben is the name of the bell inside the tower. The tower itself used to be called the Clock Tower, but 7 years ago they officially renamed it the Queen Elizabeth II Tower. Yay! But we also call it Big Ben, so don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Now, Big Ben itself is the most iconic symbol of our city, which is why it's extra annoying that it's covered up. But I do want to say that originally it was never supposed to exist at all. And London was bombed so severely during the war that many historical buildings were ruined beyond repair, entire neighborhoods were wiped off the map, and thousands of people were killed. Historians estimate that fewer than 10 people may have died in the Great Fire of London. And they think the number might be that small because nobody panicked. And nobody panicked because London was a really crowded city built entirely out of wood, which meant fires happened here all the time.
It's inspired by the British science from Venice. I don't know if it's really distinctive enough, but anyway, in here they have a pipe organ. wasn't.
Yeah, you say, oh, that was Henry III or Richard II. So it kind of means that the church is a bit of a chronological jigsaw puzzle, that any piece you look at, inside or outside, can come from any time within the last 1,000 years. The oldest stone that we can see is on the side here. It's the 1200s. It goes back to the 1480s. The towers here were added in the 1700s. You can see they're a different color than the rest of the building.